Hi there, this is BJ Jones. I'm the artistic director of Northlight Theater. And today we're going to interview our Jeff Award nominee and most prolific playwright, one of the 20 top playwrights produced in America. And not just a playwright, but he's also a director and one of the great playwriting mentors in America, our pal, Stephen Dietz. How are you, Stephen?
I'm great, thank you. I especially after that intro, my heart is full now. So thank you.
Is it thumping? And I called you Stephen. I've never called you Stephen before in my life.
That's all right. You usually call me much worse than that. So I really appreciate that you're on good behavior. This is nice. This is good.
I am. You know, we have a lot of dear friends in common. Yeah. And I think I first heard your name as a player. Well, I just realized that's a lie. I first saw one of your plays, I think, down at Humana early on in my artistic director career. And John Jory, of course, mentioned you. And I think I saw your work at Wisdom Bridge, yeah?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Which was...
87, I want to say.
Was it, what is it, November?
It was like 10 November.
10 November.
At Wisdom Bridge, and a lot of great Chicago collaborators who are still famous in Chicago worked on that.
Yeah, and yes, and which was about the Edmund Fitzgerald, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Which maybe I should take a look at that play again. That's
you should absolutely, as soon as we get off this call.
Yeah, that's right. I was really struck by it. I thought it was a beautiful production.
Thank you.
Richard E.T. White directed it.
Richard E.T. White directed it. Music by Rob Milburn, Michael Bodine, and Eric Peltonimi, and it's a great group. Yeah,
and then Northlight had the privilege of doing the world premiere along with Berkeley Rep, Lonely Planet, which has been done internationally as well as nationally.
Yeah.
And I also remember, and I was very touched by, I was directing for Bart Scher out at Indaman. I was directing Rounding Third by Richard Dresser, and I went over to the Children's Theater, and you had directed, I think you had directed your play Honus and Me, which was about the baseball card, right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm a big baseball fan, and that was it was an adaptation of a book by Dan Gutman. So I got to do Honus and Me. Then there's a Jackie Robinson one called Jackie and Me. So I got to do both of those, and as a baseball lover, that was a labor of love. And those plays have had a nice life, but it was just sweet to combine the love of theater with a little bit of baseball.
Well, maybe that's a good place to start. You were a director.
Yeah, I sort of still think of myself as a director who writes plays. I fell in, as you know, with this great group of writers at the Playwright Center in Minneapolis in the 80s. August Wilson had just arrived, and Lee Blessing, Marisha Chamberlain, Barbara Field. And I'm a young whippersnapper, but I just kind of lied my way in and said, yeah, I'll direct these readings of plays. And that was really my boot camp and my grad school. Of course, I learned a ton about directing. I wasn't writing plays yet, but I watched writers work at their craft. And you and I have talked about how bereft our field is sometimes of true apprenticeships.
Yeah,
I think sometimes, maybe a stage manager will have a great assistant in that apprenticeship. You'll have an assistant director, but it's not something, I don't think it's something our field is particularly good at, but that was sort of my apprenticeship to that these writers, many of whom were also just starting out. August hadn't written Ma Rainey yet. He was just working. This was early for all of us, and I sort of feel like I was very fortunate and caught this wave of terrific writers, and then started writing my own plays. But that director voice, you've probably seen me in rehearsal, or you've heard me talk about my plays. That director voice is very alive in me, and hopefully I can put that in the service of a production when I'm collaborating with, you or Helena or any of the other great directors I get to work with.
Yeah, was John Olive at the...
Oh yeah, God, I should have mentioned him first and foremost. He he was what I mean, he was a rock star to all of us. He was sort of the first one that broke the Minneapolis bubble even before August, because all of us having plays at Wisdom Bridge. Bob Falls was doing, he was Standing on My Knees, Clara's play, some of those plays. And
I directed Voice of the Prairie.
Oh, so did I. Yeah.
I did it.
I mean, I've since told John Olive that I still set the margins in my plays, that what we used to call the tabs. I don't know what they're called on computers anymore. Where he set them up, because his was really the first play I'd ever seen typed out. That's how naive I was.
Oh, wow. And so let me jump ahead. It seems to me that there were like 3 plays going on in Chicago at the same time: Bloomsday and Clover Road, on Clover Road.
Yeah,
Was there a third, or were we?
No, I don't think so. But American Blues was doing Clover Road. Remy Bumpo did Bloomsday. Those were not quite on top of each other, but they were very near each other. And it means the world to me. I've said this in other contexts, but it always means the world to me to come and work on a play, especially a new play like we got to do with How a Boy Falls in Chicago. It is. I suspect if I lived in Chicago like you all do, maybe I'd, you start to complain about the city you live in, and all the dirt and the gossip and everything. And I gotta say, when I come to Chicago, I can go out to bars and hear that from people. But oh my God, I feel like I'm in the most vibrant, passionate, cantankerous new play home. So the theaters in Chicago have been great to me.
Well, I would argue you've been pretty great to us as well. So, if memory serves, I gave you a call because I spoke to my old friend Jim Sullivan, who directed Bloomsday, and he had just seen Clover Road, and I thought, boy, I haven't talked to Dietz in a long time. I'll give him a call, and I think. And one of the reasons was we had done Mousetrap. We flogged Mousetrap, and it was very successful for us. And I was taken aback by it didn't have any stars. John Barry did a nice job directing it, and it had a lot of young, very diverse folks in the cast, and our audience just loved it.
Yeah.
It occurred to me that they love a thriller, a mystery. Yeah. And so I called you and I said, what are you working on?
It was a fortuitous timing, I think. You must have read my mind, or else you've installed devices here somewhere in my studio. And I was, I don't know where I was with How a Boy Falls. Maybe I'd finished a draft. I remember you read, if not the first draft, you read a very early draft. I had been having some readings we have a lot of readings of new plays back when we all could gather. We have a front room in our house that we have a lot of actor friends. My wife is also a playwright, and I kept having them over and writing different versions of this thriller, because they're hard to crack, as you know. And I was absolutely delighted that there was a lot of work that still needed to be done, which we also got to do during the great premiere you all did for me. But I was glad that it piqued your interest. And you called me with such enthusiasm, and it was fantastic.
Well, the first 20 pages really grabbed me.
Yeah.
And I loved the way you played with time and played with part of the mystery.
Yeah.
And the thriller, the whodunitness of it,
yeah.
was with the way you altered the building blocks of the play and the sort of character revelations of the play. And that was what really grabbed me anyway. And I know that I can be a little, prescriptive. And I'm saying take away this or take away that.
After 40 some plays, I love that. You know, if you'd have said that to me maybe when I was 25 years old, I'd either, wept or like, thrown my drink in your face. At this point, like, it's like, I trust you. You've made a lot of plays. I've made a lot of plays. Um, uh, we also had a great team around us. And so I was hearing your note would go in the stew, with all due respect, even though you're artistic director, your note would go in the stew with Tanya Palmer's notes and Helena Kay's notes and all these great people's notes. And then it's my job. It's not in my opinion, it's not the people who give the notes' job to tell me then to figure out how to sort through the notes. A professional playwright takes the feedback, invites the scrutiny, and then sorts through it. So it's not your job to censor that. In some ways, it's cleaner to me when you just say, Dietz, why is that scene in the play? That's really, it's helpful.
And let's talk about that team. Tanya Palmer, of course, was finishing up her last year as the director of new play development at the Goodman, and she is now at, I think, University of Indiana, heading up the new play development department. And she's great. She's so nurturing, and she has a wonderful ability to stay outside and give sort of non-judgmental reflection. I think is a real gift. And then Helena Case, who was one of your students.
One of my students.
And had she done work with you before? I can't remember now.
She did Clover Road. So she did that. It wasn't the premiere, but it was, it was an absolutely memorable production. I think that got Jeff nominated, but for some of the actresses, it certainly should have at American Blues. She and Helena just knocked that out of the park. I remember talking to you about her, and it was great to see the two. I kind of knew the two of you had hit it off, and she speaks, and I think some of it was because we did Clover Road, and some of it just the way that Helena is wired. She speaks my language in some ways. Maybe that's because I was one of her teachers, but she also fundamentally understands sort of the puzzle pieces of a thriller and how to communicate that to actors. Because as you know, there's what the actor knows, there's what the character knows, and then there's what the character can show in that given scene. And since much of a thriller is keeping things from the audience, the act of directing a thriller and modulating that, we had a great cast of actors, but to modulate that with the actors and say, I know you know that in scene 2, you have to cover that. You can't say that or we don't have a surprise later. Boy, that sounds easy, but it takes a really gifted director who's also just so no nonsense and is fun to work with. It takes a really good director to do that.
She also used to work with Barrel of Monkeys. She was the director of Barrel of Monkeys. And so she can tease out comedy as well.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Part of your storytelling gift, that sort of byplay. She also, I remember when I first read the play, we talked about it, and you said you had a vision of the two women at the very last scene. Somehow come together to make sure that the boy falls. And I remember you saying that, and that's what made me pick up the phone to talk to Helena, because I felt that it was a woman's play to direct.
That whole team brought so much to it. Kristen Osborne, Lizzie Bracken, the set designer. It's a great group, and credit for you for assembling them and unleashing them on the play.
Yeah. Now, it occurs to me when you said, because you're prolific, how many plays have you actually had published?
Oh, published is probably 25 or something. I mean, I think I've premiered 30 or 30 some full-length plays.
Wow.
I've premiered them. I've plays on this shelf over here that never been premiered or haven't been premiered yet. But I've been very fortunate. I've had a lot of theaters have made a commitment to me. But I'm definitely in the I'm definitely in the 30s
Wow.
when it gets to produce plays.
So we hear this all the time when we do Backstage with BJ, and now we're doing At Home with BJ. Uh, we hear this all the time. The questions we hear from our audiences is, where do you start? What trips off the tail? What inspires you? How do you find your ideas?
It, well, I'm suspicious of. I don't wait for ideas, for one thing. I'm suspicious of the mythology that if you came to a playwriting workshop of mine, BJ, and I said, "What are you working on?" You said, "I don't have any ideas." I would say that's a broken mythology, that you have to, that a great idea will fall on you. The work is to yeah, stay open to, for me, to stay open to some sort of trigger. A guy brings a chair into a map store. That's all I knew, and that became a play called Lonely Planet. That if I wait around to have a good enough idea that some theater is going to produce this play a year and a half from now, I would just freeze up, because I would look at all the other ideas of all the other plays. I feel like I need a catalyst. I need a little trigger. Bloom's Day is, what if a man, instead of going back to a time, instead of just going back to a place, could literally go back to a time. And then after that, I need an approach. I need craft, and I'm going to build it from there. So though I respect and I empathize with the question of how do you come up ideas for the plays, what I would say to people about plays is, if you have a notion, follow it, and you generate the pages, and then the story making happens from there. And then I'm trying to just complicate what I see. Perhaps there are playwrights that get the notion of a whole play in their head. That has never happened to me, but something triggers me, and I just, it could be a snippet of dialogue or an image, and I just want to follow it. A woman standing on a balcony looking out at the sea. I just want to follow it.
We started before we started recording, and we said Hadu. We started talking about this moment in time.
Yeah.
And this is sort of tangential to the conversation about where do they come from, and
Yeah.
and what are the inspirations. And I said, well, this is, we're all sort of stalled.
Yeah.
And you were talking about other playwrights because you mentor so many. Can we jump back into that conversation?
Sure. No, I have the good fortune to, and I've taken the opportunity to, during this pandemic, reach out to a lot of former students who are writing plays, writing TV and film in the industry, because I miss them and I admire them, and it just seems like a good time to reach out. And of course, their reactions to this are all over the spectrum. But again, I think another mythology we have is that, well, this would be a great time to be a writer because you have nothing but time. And there's a lot to unpack in that. For one thing, writers sometimes need to go fallow. Theaters cannot afford to go fallow. You need to keep bubbling up and doing things, and when audiences want connections with theaters. There's a wonderful history of writers saying, actually, a fertile field has to go fallow every few years. That I can go fallow and I will come back. Maybe it's after this pandemic, or maybe it's down the road. The other thing, and what I was alluding to earlier, is that I also have young playwright colleagues who, they got out of grad school, some cool stuff happened, they got a grant, they got a commission, they've been in rehearsal, and they've been operating on sort of playwright adrenaline. And that has prompted another play and prompted another play. Now that's a fantastic ride, but when that ride ends, I had that ride very, very early on. I was a couple early plays of mine. When that ends and suddenly you just have a year and no one's doing your play, or you have a year and we're having a year, or sadly maybe a couple, without theater or without much development. That adrenaline evaporates. And then I think you get truly tested. This is my opinion. This is not prescriptive to anyone, but then I think that's when I think you get truly tested, which can I generate that adrenaline? Can I generate that passion? Because we all say, leave me alone, I want to write. Well, be careful what you wish for. So now the world has left you alone for 9 months, but I do think we get used to a sort of adrenaline, and I am very glad. It hasn't been easy for any of us, but I'm glad to be going through this in my early 60s when I have a certain level of whatever people think of my plays. I have a mechanism and craft, and I know I come and do my work every morning. I think there's for a lot of playwrights, this has been such a profound disruption, and hopefully what it will do is let them find this pact you make. Writing is a pact you make with solitude. And out of that pact, you generate things, and then luckily in the theater, that solitude gives way to, if you're lucky, to collaboration. But I suspect there's a lot of writers feeling a lot of pressure that they should have written 3 plays during this pandemic. And if I were talking to them, I would say, there's no rules for that. Develop your practice, whether it's yoga, whether it's whatever your practice is. Writing is a practice as much as an art.
And that speaks to what you said about 2 paragraphs ago, which was craft. I mean, Tennessee Williams, he famously rewrote many of his plays.
Yeah.
He always started, no matter how hungover he was, he would get up at the crack of dawn and make a pot of black coffee and smoke a pack of cigarettes, and he would that was his discipline, to lean back on his craft and work until noon. When apparently the sun was over the yardarm. And, but in the meantime, for 6 hours, he was focused on writing or rewriting. Eccentricities of a nightingale. Take out a character, put in a scene.
And there's no reward. And then the next question then is, if I do that, my plays will get done? No, there's no reward. No, we don't get any points for how hard we work. We get points for how good the work we make is. But is it Arnold Palmer or Jack Nicklaus? The more I practice, the luckier I get. The more we do our work, I just know the work gets better, the plays get better, and then it's also really good practice. As you know, we have a preview at Northlight, and most of the play works, but there's a section in Act 2 that doesn't work. If I haven't practiced, and I go back to my hotel room and I'm going to sit and wait for inspiration, the theater's a deadline art form, and the actors are in there at noon, and so hopefully my craft has given me, like the way we train actors, some you can call them tricks, you can call them craft, you can call them skill, but some tangible things to apply to those moments.
I think that's really true. It is a deadline. It's what goads us on eventually. You're going to have to get in front of the audience, and and the audience will, if you listen hard enough, tell you what you need to accomplish.
It has been the hardest thing. I've had a couple readings during Zoom readings during the pandemic, and I'm glad for the level of which it's keeping us connected. But the thing that I thought would be the hardest was to not be in the room with the actors. That's been hard. I miss that enormously. May we never ever take that for granted again. But the harder thing to me has been what you just said, is I haven't been able to listen to audiences. I love to look down on the little chat bar or whatever it's called and see, 120 people are watching this thing of mine, but you're that way too. I need to sit beside someone and see when they're antsy, or hear when someone gasps, or see when they lean forward. We've been missing that. I've been missing that.
It's funny. I've worked with a lot of people on new plays, And I was thinking about Bruce Graham, who with frequency doesn't even watch the play, but stands behind the audience and walks back and forth and listens to the texture of the play and the call and response of the audience. And that's how he sort of internalizes the rhythm of the interaction of the audience. And whereas John Olive, I remember we had made some rewrites to Voice of the Prairie when we did it at Wisdom Bridge to add this kind of fire that occurs and in the play. And I would see him sit in his seat and say the lines along with the actors. And I'd look over at him. I almost want to toss him out because he was acting, because he was acting along with them. No two playwrights are the same, and in a kind of joyous way. Actually.
It makes me want to have you written a play?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh God, no. God, no.
Because
no, I'm only pretentious enough to think I can tell you how to write a play.
No, I don't want to do that. I don't mean this to mock you or anything, but to experience probably another thing. Your talks with BJ that gets asked of playwrights is, what does it feel like? What does it feel like to see those people up there and they're saying your words? And it is a completely unique thing for all of us, I'm sure, but it's a real out of body experience. Like I was a bad actor like in college, but I've at least experienced acting. But if it's hard to explain to. I always appreciate if actors or directors or designers they've written a little 10-minute play and they've seen what it's like to sit there and wherever you are on the Bruce Graham, John Olive spectrum, it is a completely surreal experience.
Yeah, I also think because you've experienced acting and because you've experienced directing, those two influences speak to and inform, I think, your playwriting. I think I have such, number one for me, the whole thing is the playwright is God. Secondly, because I'm an actor, the marriage of that actor's art and the playwright's voice is the job for me as a director is to make sure that those two are working together, singing in tune together. I'm old school. I don't really care if you don't see my work as a director. I care more about your work as a playwright and the actor's work to make sure that they're being true to one another. And then I go away. I know that's, there are a lot of directors who do astonishingly amazing visual work, and that's not my personal.
Yeah, I think you and I are cut from the same cloth. At some point, I love how people's talent, however it manifests, but at some point, you're going to have a conversation as a director with an actor about a moment, and it's often going to be a moment of text. And at that point, whatever context or world or everything you put around it, it's going to come down to intention and rhythm and tone and voice, which brings it back to probably the things that I was wrestling with in my studio when I first typed the line. So it takes the whole spectrum. I think it was Kazan who said that the thing I love about directing is you just have to know so damn much. Or you have to know a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
About all these pockets and all these corners. So yeah, I can see. I don't know if my bad acting shows up in my play. It makes me want to write great roles for great actors, and that
words to be spoken. Rhythms. Yeah. I mean, that's what informs, I think, your playwriting. The lines are actually to be spoken by human beings.
Yeah.
And not potentially lofty.
Well, and spoken once, right? So that's what makes it different than fiction.
Yeah.
Because that great sentence, you don't get to go back and go, what was that? Let me reread it. No, you get one shot.
Yeah.
You get one shot.
Yeah. Hey, thanks. I enjoyed it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. This is
I know you spend your mornings writing, so I knew I didn't want to get.
I did a couple hours already, so but but I can feel some lunch coming on though. So
You're working on Gaslight now, which I'm gonna enjoy reading.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna send you I have a revised draft. Having just heard a reading of it. Yeah, I'm very lucky. Very quickly, I was lucky to be I'm the first playwright that's been granted permission from the Patrick Hamilton estate to do a new version of the play, which was called Angel Street, which is a very different setup and story than the movie. Although, of course, it has the fundamental relationship at the center of it, and of course, the phrase "gaslight" has become ubiquitous, and it all goes back to that. Yeah. It all goes back to that 1938 play.
It's kind of timely now.
It's kind of timely, and again, it's thriller practice. To me, it's the mother of all thrillers. It as much as I love Dial In for Murder and Wait Until Dark and Veronica's Room and all those things. To me, Gaslight or Angel Street is sort of the head of the class. So it's like me skiing like double black diamond or whatever those are called. It's like trying to wrestle this great story. So it's fun.
Great. Well, thank you, and congratulations on your Jeff Knob.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for doing such a great production of the play. It's my pleasure.
Okay, we'll do something else again, Dietz.
Let's do it. All right.